seats. Good morning once again, and let me first start to introducing our sign language interpreters. We have Eula Dunstone as well as Eugenia Jose, who will be providing sign language services to us this morning. Good morning to the Minister of Electricity and Energy, Dr. Kgosientsho Ramokgopa, the Chairperson of Eskom Board, Dr. Mteto Nyati, Group Chief Executive of Eskom, Mr. Dan Marokane, the leadership of Unisa, led by Prof. Mwepe, as well as Prof. Matli and Prof. Lidimu, joined by Prof. Senukwane, distinguished guests, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome to the University of the Land. Three years ago, this country was living in the dark, literally and figuratively. Load shedding was not just an inconvenience. It was a threat to livelihoods, to hospitals, to classrooms, to hope. Business switched off, dreams were put on hold, and all we asked the same question, which was, will we have power today? Today we gather under very difficult lights, 450 plus consecutive days without load shedding. A grid that is more stable, costs that are down, and confidence that is returning. That did not happen by accident. It happened because of leadership, because of courage, because of hard decisions made at the highest levels. And that is why we are here this morning. Welcome to the Unisa Graduate School of Business Leadership Distinction Dialogue, a home of thought leadership, frank conversation, and solutions that matter for South Africa. In partnership with the Department of Electricity and Energy and Eskom Holdings, this platform exists to take the most critical national conversations out of the boardroom and into the public square. Just by the way, we do have an audience joining us virtually via the live stream link. As I've mentioned, my name is Musidi Mukhele from the National Press Club, and it is my privilege to guide our proceedings this morning. Today we ask, what were the lessons in keeping the lights on? How did we recover generation? And what is the roadmap for long-term energy security? To our guests here in Midrand and to everyone else joining us via the live stream across the country, thank you for being part of this moment, because what happens in the energy sector happens to all of us. I have introduced our sign language interpreters, but for the benefit of everyone that might not be aware, our restrooms are straight out of this door on your right. And for emergency, we will have our OHS teams guiding us to emergency exit points. We are honored to be joined by the Honorable Minister of Electricity and Energy, Dr. Kgosientsho Ramokgopa. Minister, you have led this portfolio with agency and clarity, and we are especially proud that you are also an alumni of Unisa SBM. A son of this house, a son of this house now leading the nation, we welcome you back home. To Dr. Mteto Nyati, Chairperson of the Eskom Board, you bring a wealth of leadership experience, having been at the helm of some of this country's most respected organizations. Your stewardship at board level has been critical to stabilizing governance and restoring confidence. To the Group Chief Executive of Eskom, Mr. Dan Marokane, you stepped in at one of the most difficult moments in Eskom's history. Under your leadership, we have seen operational discipline, transparency, and the real results on the ground. To the three of you gentlemen and the entire Eskom team, thank you. You inherited a crisis and you chose to lead. South Africa is seeing the results. And then beginning with our host, Unisa has always been a beacon for research, innovation, and public discourse. Please join me in welcoming Professor M. Mwepe, who is the Acting Vice Principal for Research, Postgraduate Studies, Innovation, and Commercialization to deliver the official welcome. Prof. Mwepe.
Madam Program Director, Me Musidi Mukhele, I am delighted, as I'm told by an African paramyologist, that a visitor comes with 10 blessings, eat 1 and leave 9. We are privileged at the University of South Africa, the University of the Land, to host this important occasion, as we will be left with 9 blessings. It is our pleasure to partner in this dialogue so that we gain a deeper understanding of the government's plan and celebrate the current Eskom leadership on keeping the lights on. It has been long since the lights have been on, as you have said. And gone are the days when a popular paramyologist would be Matata Aka Afeta Akiza Chipsile Eskom combined. Madam Program Director, let me recognize the presence of the Honorable Minister of Electricity and Energy, Dr. Kgosientsho Ramokgopa, who is Unisa is his alma mater. The Chairperson of the Eskom Board, Dr. Mteto Nyati, Group Chief Executive of Eskom, Mr. Dan Marokane, senior representatives from the Department of Electricity and Energy, members of the Unisa Council and Executive Management, especially Dr. Azwindini Chivasi, the CEO of the Graduate School of Business Leadership, who is the landlord today, Professor Walter Matli, Professor Ophelia Lidimu, the Director of Academic Affairs here at SBL, Professor Witumelo Sinogwane, the Acting Executive Director for Institutional Development, Ms. Refilwe Sibutuma, who is representing the Royal Bafokeng, members of the media, distinguished guests, colleagues and cousins, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Ladies and gentlemen, I have been requested, or rather instructed, to welcome you on behalf of the Principal and Vice Chancellor of the University of South Africa, Professor Buleleng Kabula. Therefore, I am not going to add anything to the words that have been given. Neither am I going to take away any weight. I'm just going to read the message. I am both humbled and elevated by the honor and privilege to welcome you on behalf of the Chancellor of the University of South Africa, Dr. Thabo Mbeki, and the Vice Chancellor, Professor Buleleng Kabula, to this dialogue, which is powered by Eskom and the Minister of Electricity and Energy. Madam Program Director, our VC and Principal, Professor Lengabula, would have loved to be present here today in person, but could not because of other competing priorities, health, and other commitments. Where I come from, they say, "Ditswechi mafat." Kasetswana ba re ditiro ga di latsane. And where I come from, they say, "Di ka se tlwe ka leshaka ba di shaba le gona." So we have to proceed. Madam Program Director, the conversation about Eskom can sometimes carry a heaviness to them, as you have said that. And understandably so, given what so many South Africans have lived through over the past 2 decades. But today, we would like to hold a different kind of space. Not one that ignores the difficulty of the road ahead, but one that approaches it with openness, with curiosity, and with a genuine belief that progress is possible when the right people are willing to sit together and talk honestly. This is really what a turnaround is. It is not a single decision or a single policy. It is a collective act of many people in many rooms like this one, choosing to keep showing up, keep contributing, and keep believing that the lights can, in fact, stay on. And load shedding is now a thing of the past. Gone are the days when Nando's used to make a mockery of Eskom. I won't say what Nando's did, but we all know what they did. Now there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and I'm certain that it is not the light of the oncoming train. It is hope, like a sight of a shooting star in darkness, across the velvet of the night, tracing the paths of burning light, displaying a powerful symbol of hope, dreams, and quick wishes in the dark. It gives us a reason to look up and believe in better days even when times are hard, that even in the deepest black, light always finds a way back. And we thank the Minister of Electricity and Energy for this uninterrupted provision of electricity. Honorable Minister, there is something common between the University of South Africa and Eskom. And one of the instituted or optimized 10 catalytic niche areas here at the University of South Africa, as we try to contribute towards solving grand societal challenges, the catalytic niche area is energy. And we do have researchers that are tackling this one, with one researcher looking at recycling batteries and other one renewable energy. And we are hoping that we will continue to collaborate in this. And to create the infrastructure, the university has acquired an experimental farm and also an airstrip so that we are able to train pilots and air traffic controllers. Both Unisa and Eskom operate nationally, serve as vital national institutions, and we have already partnered with Eskom on research, knowledge management, and energy literacy initiatives. Because we believe that electricity is an integral part of economic development, advancement, and economic justice, and the progression of modern civilization with application in all sectors of industry, business, and domestic use. It is my pleasure to welcome you here today. Ladies and gentlemen, there is something quietly powerful about the phrase, keeping the lights on. But we all know it is that between different industries, from a hospital ward, we can't operate without the lights being on. I want to share a small image with you, one that I think captures why we are all in this room together. If you have ever walked through a forest, you may have heard of the idea that the trees are not really as separate as they appear. Beneath the soil, their root systems are joined by vast, invisible networks of fungi. Scientists sometimes call it wood wide web. Though through it, trees share water, nutrients, and even warning signals with one another. A tree that stands alone, cut off from that network, is far more vulnerable to drought, to disease, and to hard season. But a tree connected to the forest draws on the strength of the whole system around it, and in turn contributes its own strength back. Our economy works very much the same way. A factory, a hospital, a small township business, a university like ours, a farmer's cold storage room, each one looks on the surface like its own separate tree. But underneath, they are all drawing from the same root system, a stable, reliable supply of electricity. When that root system is healthy, the whole forest thrives together. When it falters, even the strongest, best-run business can find itself standing alone in a drought it did not create. That is the quite powerful truth behind the words, keeping the lights on. It is not just about Eskom. It is about the health of the entire forest we all belong. It is fitting then that we gather in a room like this one to discuss this issue. As I conclude, ladies and gentlemen, let me end by saying, this Sotho proverbs highlights the positive impact of welcoming guests and the reciprocal nature of hospitality. Welcome to the University of the Land, home of leaders. Most in the know and the leadership are the product of this noble institution. President Mandela, President Mbeki, President Ramokgopa, even our Honorable Minister of Electricity and Energy is the alumni of this university, the fountain from which people and the nation quench their education thirst. You are welcome. I thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Mwepe. To frame today's conversation and remind us why governance and leadership matter in times of crisis, I now invite Prof. Walter Matli, who is the Executive Dean and CEO of Unisa School of Business Leadership, to set the scene for us.
Program Director, Mayor Musiri Mukhele, the Minister of Electricity and Energy, Dr. Kgosientsho Ramokgopa, the Chairperson of Eskom Board, Dr. Mteto Nyati, the Group Chief Executive of Eskom, and Den Marokane, the Vice Principal for Teaching and Learning, Dr. Chivase, the Vice Principal for Research, Innovation, and Commercialization, Professor Mwepe, and our Unisa Executive Management, management from Eskom, management from the Department of Electricity and Energy, members of the media, distinguished guests, good morning. This morning I have a privilege to reflect alongside you on this important conversation and the reality of our country, our realities that the country's source through the lens of Eskom turnaround strategy. What are the lessons that we can learn from keeping the lights on? A subject that is the subject that sits at the heart of our country's socio-economic and the life of our people on the grounds. The theme before us forces us to confront the phrase "keeping the lights on." When you look closely at this expression, we find that it is not a legal description of the Eskom mandate. Eskom's Memorandum of Incorporation described the company as existing to provide energy and electricity-related services, including generation, transmission, and distribution, and retail. But in the live situation, the lived experiences of our normal South Africans in our communities, that formal role is often understood through simpler public phrases such as keeping the lights on. It is a phrase that people use to reach when a hospital needs to operate through the night as expected with no disruption, when a factory must complete production with no disruption, when a small business should be able to trade, plan, and scale in a reliable environment, when a student must do their work that requires them to be connected, they require electricity, when households must cook, when economy must recover from the confidence to plan beyond the next interruption. In this sense, electricity reliability becomes a measure of institutional reliability. When electricity systems falters, the effects travel beyond the grid. They move through hospitals, classrooms, our factories, municipalities, households, and also investment, a decision, and the public confidence. Eskom's turnaround therefore invites a larger question. How does a public institution recover trust, rebuild discipline, and return to the work of enabling the national life? The question that must be asked, we hope it should be asked with honesty, but also fairness to the present moment. The Eskom story cannot be frozen at its most difficult chapter. South Africa knows the history of load shedding We know the disruption, the frustration, the loss of confidence, and the economic cost. But a great deal has happened since. The work before us today is to understand the movement from deterioration to stability and from crisis management to possibility of sustained institutional performance. There was a period when some energy analysts and economists were warning that the crisis reflected more than just a shortage of electricity. It reflected operational stress, governance strain, and erosion in the institutional capacity. The history is important because it tells us how deep the repair had to go. A turnaround is never simply the return to a favorable headline. It's a rebuilding of systems, disciplines, controls, morale, accountability. It is also a slow institutional work of making reliability repeatable. Today, Eskom itself represents a materially different picture. In May 2026, as Professor Mwepe has indicated, Eskom announced that they reached 365 days without interruption of load shedding. Eskom described this as a shift from recovering grid to a more stable and high-performing power system. It also reported that over the last 3 years, it has sustained reliability to save about 26.9 billion in diesel cost. And this enabled Eskom to meet its 100% of the country's electricity demand. This performance tells us a story. I have no doubt that the Eskom team, led by the Minister of Electricity and Energy, Eskom Board Chairperson, and Eskom Group Executive Officer, present here today, will expand more on these successes. These figures and those that are yet to be told should not be treated as decorative numbers. They are evidence of a system that has begun to respond to the strategy, governance, and oversight and the operational discipline that we see today. They also remind us that the turnaround must be protected. It is our experience that recovery creates its own risk, including the complexity, the assumption that the milestone is the same as the performance, and the risk of undermining the work still requires in the distribution, municipal debt recovery, infrastructure investment, affordability, and audit recovery, and the transition towards more competitive electricity market. The question before us, therefore, belongs squarely within the work of the business leadership education, how institutions diagnose failure, how board restores oversight, how executives converts strategy into execution, how public institution rebuilds trust, how accountability travels through complex systems, and how organization sustain improvement after agency of crisis has passed. Our role as the Graduate School of Business Leadership is to help build that capacity through teaching, research, executive education, and engaged scholarship and strategic partnership with public and private institutions. We seek to contribute to leadership who can understand the complexity without being paralyzed by it, who can turn policy into implementation, who can convert strategy into measurable outcomes, and who can act with discipline in environments where failure carries consequences far beyond the organization itself. That is why this dialogue belongs here. It allows us to draw on lessons from Eskom's recovery without reducing those lessons and applause. The presence of the minister and the executive from Eskom gives this conversation a depth it requires. We can engage the turnaround strategy from the perspective of policy, governance, and execution held all together in this same room. That is the level of which Eskom's story must now be understood. As we listen this morning, the useful question may be whether Eskom has turned a page. The evidence is there. We've seen, we've reported on it. The more demanding question is what must be written on the next chapter, the next page. how the gains are sustained, how the remaining weaknesses are addressed, how energy transition is managed, and how affordability is protected, how infrastructure is secured, how institutional confidence is rebuilt over time. The phrase keeping the lights on may sound simple. Beneath lies engineers, people with extensive experience in finance, governance, policy, maintenance, labor, security, community cooperation, public trust, and the national coordination. It is a phrase that carries the ordinary hopes of our South Africans in our communities. On behalf of Unisa Graduate School of Business Leadership, we are grateful to partner on this platform with our strategic partners and the leaders gathered here today. We look forward to a constructive, evidence-led conversation on Eskom's turnaround strategy, the lessons that can be drawn from it, and the work that is still required to be carried out. I thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Matli, for grounding us in the why behind the dialogue. Ladies and gentlemen, to deliver the opening address and share government's view on the turnaround strategy, generation recovery and the energy action plan, we welcome the Minister of Electricity and Energy, Dr. Kgosientsho Ramokgopa. Minister, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Program Director, Sis Musili Mokhele. Let me take the opportunity to extend my warm and sincere greetings to our host and my alma mater, here led by Prof. Ngwepe, and also to thank the CEO of the SBL and the Executive Dean, Prof. Matli, for the words of welcome and framing the conversation. The leadership of Unisa in all your eminence. I'm advised that Prof. Ludimo is here, Dr. Nitsivase is here, and also, of course, Prof. Senokwan. Let me acknowledge the presence of the ministry led by, I think, the Acting Director General is here, and also the leadership of Eskom here present, members of the media, and all and sundry, everyone in your eminence. Thank you very much. Let me also acknowledge fellow engineer, Dr. Mteto, and fellow engineer, Mr. Marokane. I'll come back to why I'm saying fellow engineer. I'm very judicious about, no, because the story of Eskom must be told in its totality. So this is not a miracle. Fellow engineer, Dr. Mteto, and fellow engineer, Mr. Marokane. During the period of question and answer, and also when we have the conversation, I'll expand on why it is important that I make that point. And just to thank Unisa for having occasioned this conversation. I mean, this is a citadel of intellectual discourse. The nice thing about an institution of learning, higher learning, as Prof. Matli makes the point, is that you are going to uncover and unmask the real story behind just what the facade suggests is keeping the lessons to be learned in keeping the lights on. I thought that it is instructive that I position the conversation by providing, if you like, a critique and also a reflection on why Eskom was formed in the first place. Because for you to understand the complexity of the question before us, keeping the lights on, and the fact that load shedding was consequential, and I'll also expand what I mean by consequential. when we get an opportunity to have a conversation. I think it's instructive that you have an appreciation of why Eskom was established. First is that there has to be an acknowledgement of what I call the minerals and energy complex has been the driving force behind South Africa's industrialization. So you can track back the discovery of diamond in Kimberley in the early years, about 1867. And much later, about 1882, the discovery of gold in Johannesburg. And it is during this point that the gold, the capitalist of the time, of course, one of the principal and preeminent actors of the time in the gold mining industry was Cecil John Rhodes. They are the ones who were able to ensure that you are able to build coal-fired power stations next to gold mines so that you are able to provide the necessary electricity that will be able to help you to extract the gold and also introduce some degree of efficiency and mechanization in the manner in which you are extracting gold. So what is the lesson there on the electrification of the country, starting Kimberley and then Johannesburg? Was that electricity was not a public good. Electricity was an instrument for capital and private accumulation, led by industrialists of the time. So when the ramping up of additional generation capacity, it was not meant to provide access to communities, but it was meant to ensure that the extractive capability of the industrialists of the time becomes even more efficient and they are able to generate and maximize returns. So this story gets to change in 1910 when the Transvaal Act was promulgated. What does the Act say? So the Act places electricity, or rather the state, at the center hands of the public sector. So the state must be at the forefront, and it also advocates for economies of scale. So at the time you had a multiplicity of players on the generation side. So it argued that you needed to aggregate that. Of course, we're still 4 provinces. So even at the time, 1910, the Republic was in its formation. It only applied to the Transvaal, and much later it will expand to other parts of the country. So we are seeing the first intentions of the state to say that the state must be an active actor. The state can't be retrenched. The state must be a primary protagonist and actor in the industrialization of the country. And then we're seeing that over a passage of time, Jan Smuts himself puts together what he calls the Metz Commission. So what the Metz Commission was intended to do was to ensure that the electricity becomes cheaper, because Smuts has accepted that the electricity is going to be the key igniter of industrialization in the country. In fact, he used the phrase in that it's going to be the ticket to industrialization. And therefore, for South Africa to be competitive to industrialize at a pace much faster than its peers, including Europe at the time, because they counted as peers, that the electricity ought to be cheaper. And what were the recommendations of the Metz Commission? 2 recommendations. The first one is that you must unify the sector. So essentially, there can't be a plethora of players. I did say the Transvaal Act only isolated that intervention to the Transvaal. But what they argued now, almost 12 years in the life of the Republic, they've decided that there can be multiple actors. The actors were municipalities, the actors were private mines, as I mentioned before, is that it must be unified under one umbrella and it must be regulated. So that's where you then have the introduction of administered prices. So the state now takes ownership of driving industrialization, and they accept that the biggest lever they had at the time to industrialize the country was electricity. Then this racial government takes that position and says that this is the way to go. And then 1923, after the Metz Commission, which was established in 1922, Janet produces a report, and that's why you have something called Eskom, which was birthed. And then they make a decisive call. They say the chairperson of this entity is going to be Hendrik van der Bijl, one of the most prominent, if you like, preeminent industrialist scientists of his generation. Leave what apartheid represents. I'm using a narrow lens, that this is the industrialist of our time. He's going to lead this. And that's why I'm talking about the concept of what they call technopolitical, that there can be a marriage of the technical and the political. And the political must not undermine science and evidence, but must exploit science and evidence to achieve its means. And that's why the idea of technopolitical and Hendrik van der Bijl was at the forefront. And you know what they've achieved. And that's why when I started, I referred to engineer Mteto, I referred to engineer Marokane, because there are lessons to be learned in the very tragic history of apartheid. You don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. There are things that need to be excavated, and we have a duty as intellectuals to be able to excavate those. And then it goes further. 1948, General Smuts makes an intervention. He says no, because at the time, although they advocated for aggregation, you still had what we call the Victoria Falls Transvaal Power Company, which was running on its own, driven by Cecil John Rhodes, a legacy of the 4 provinces. Cecil John Rhodes put together this company with an intention of drawing hydropower from the Victoria Falls, but with the presence and the discovery of abundance of coal, abandoned the idea of importing electricity from the Victoria Falls and exploited our endowments. Smuts makes an intervention. The apartheid government says, no, we can't afford what Smuts refers to as wasteful competition. That the state has a desire to drive industrialization. We have to aggregate all of these entities now. Victoria Falls was bigger than Eskom at the time, was bigger than the South African Railways. The South African Railways also was generating electricity. And remember that its primary intention was to move excess labor from the region, Southern Africa, so that this labor can be exploited in the various mines. And also what it did, the South African Railways, was to connect collieries to exports market, but also to some of the power stations. So they were generating their own electricity. So at the time of this intervention, when Eskom was birthed, they said, Eskom, you will provide electricity to the South African Railways, and then South African Railways, the component of South African Railways that was responsible for electricity will provide for the mines. And then you had the Victoria Falls Transvaal Power Company, which was bigger than the two put together. And Smuts makes an intervention and says, you can't have the proliferation, unnecessary competition. As I said, he refers to it as wasteful competition. And then Smuts makes a decision that we are pulling all of these things together. And secondly, the apartheid government makes a decision that we are going to expropriate in the interest of the country, national interest. So what do? They expropriate the Victoria Falls Transvaal Power Company. It's now in the domain of the state, because Smuts and his peers are determined to ensure that industrialization happen. And of course, what Eskom did was to power industry and provide electricity on racial basis. So what the apartheid government did, if you had to look at Eskom, when they nationalized, they adopted what they call a Keynesian racial economic policy. So the state is interventionist, the state is a principal actor, the state will never be retrenched. That's the position that they took. So those are some of the lessons to be learned from the apartheid government. And then what they also said is that Eskom must always carry what it called the public interest. So Eskom must provide electricity at the possible cheapest price. And secondly, Eskom must act in the national interest. So that's what an apartheid government did, to place before Eskom the responsibility of providing cheap electricity, and secondly, of ensuring that they were able to support national interest, and in this instance also about industrialization. And then let's accelerate further. 1982, Eskom then went on a high. So it began to grow multifold, build power stations. What Eskom did even at the time, when there was load shedding in, I think about 1948, 1953, there was load shedding. Why was there load shedding at the time? It's because of the competing interest. One of the Afrikaner nationalists who are the Afrikaner capital, that they own the mines in South Africa. Because one of the first things that the apartheid government did was to concession the right to mining and provide coal to this power station to Afrikaner capital. So they were very deliberate in their intention that Afrikaner capital is going to own the mine. And what Afrikaner capital did was to pursue what we call Afrikaner national interest. That was asymmetrical to the interest of the colonial mining capital that was largely British. Because of ideological contestations, then the Afrikaner capital that owns the coalers decided to export. And with the rampant increase in production of electricity as a result of proliferation of new power stations, there was shortage of coal, and that led to a deficit, the supply and demand to support mining activity, and that's when you had load shedding. Of course, that was resolved over a period of time. And then Eskom continued to build power stations on the back of that experience of load shedding to ensure that you build power stations, but also you are able to secure supply so that there's certainty on the supply side. And Eskom borrowed money to support its ambition to expand. So much later, around 1978, on the back of the 1973 oil crisis, the economy began to experience significant strain. So that which was projected to be the growth in demand on the back of an exponentially increasing economy was not realized because of the 1973 oil crisis. You know, when the Gulf countries decided that anyone who supported Israel during the war against the Arab state will not receive oil, what we call the 1973 oil crisis. And on the back of that, we saw that the economy came down, and South Africa, as a result of its own isolation, it was isolated on the back of sanctions that were sponsored by progressive forces in the country, had to rely on domestic liquidity to be able to support its debt. And then the country was heavily indebted, Eskom was heavily indebted, and then we saw the electricity prices increasing by 166%. So what did P.W. Botha do? He initiated what we call the De Villiers Commission to say, understand the complexity of this space, because the steel industry in the form of ISCO and electricity in the form of Eskom was taking a beating. The economy was not growing. And then he says, answer this complex question. Remember that hitherto, electricity was said to be the cheapest and it must support national interest. So what does the De Villiers Commission do? It comes back and removes what we call the public interest clause, essentially saying now you can go the private route, that Eskom must compete in the market. It must use the principles that they apply in the market, reduce its losses, maximize its profit. It has no obligation to meet what constitute the public interest. And you saw by 1985, Eskom had employees about 66,000. 1991, that number went down to about 46,000. Today, as I speak to you, it's 42,000 because they had to introduce market principles to bring down the operational costs and ensure that they introduce efficiencies and undermine what the apartheid government had done, because Eskom also served as a platform to absorb the white labor reserve. Like I said, it was racial capital that was executed and prosecuted by apartheid government. So what P.W. Botha did was to remove the public interest clause. And that's why then you had 1998, after the liquidation of a system that is universally categorized as a crime against humanity, that is apartheid. We also introduced a white paper on electricity. What does that white paper do of a democratic government? It advocates for unbundling, the introduction of competition, and it talks about privatization. For the first time in the lexicon of the South Africa electricity complex, we imagine an electricity sector that is privatized. And this happens in 1998 at the hands of a democratic government. So I'm just saying that, and then that policy was never implemented because it received resistance from progressive forces on the left to say that we can't privatize electricity. So I thought that that context is important. That when we keep the lights on, we don't keep the lights on for its sake. The lights must support industrialization. That electricity must be affordable. I don't know how many of you in this house, in this room, can afford electricity. None of us can afford electricity. So the electricity is available, but it's not accessible. So that's the next question that we need to respond. And then we must also answer the question. The issue of unbundling started, like I said, the act makes the policy makes that point. And in fact, when we do the Electricity Act, we totally abandon the idea of public interest. So I'm making the point as a way of self-critique that the democratic government has abandoned the idea of public interest. So we must organize Eskom within this changed environment. And I'm sure that when Engineer Marokane and Engineer Dr. Mteto speak to this question, they'll attempt to answer that question from an Eskom perspective. Remember, I'm not appointed to resolve an Eskom problem. I'm appointed to resolve an electricity problem. And it could be that the case that in the resolution of that question, Eskom is a casualty. So I'm just saying you must make that nuance. We're at the university again. Yeah. It's not a press conference where we just ask some. So I'm just saying there has to be a deep appreciation of the foundational question that we attempt to answer. And I'm saying you are going to find me leaning closer to what has been the articulation of Smuts. Leave what he represented. I'm just saying on what is the role and place of electricity in industrialization. And I hope that helps to situate the conversation. Thank you very much, Program Director.
You can remain, or I'll call you back.
No, this thing.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure we can do better with our applause.
And that's
Thank you, Minister, for that powerful address. We now come to the heart of the distinction dialogue. This is where we get frank, where we ask the tough questions, where we learn the lessons that can be applied across government and state-owned entities. Leading this conversation is a scholar and governance expert. Please welcome to the stage our moderator, Professor Lidimo. Professor Lidimo is an academic and program director here at the Unisa Graduate School of Business Leadership. And joining Professor Lidimo on the panel are the architects of the turnaround. Minister has already taken his seat. And then I would also like to invite Dr. Mteto Nyati, the Chairperson of the Eskom board. And last but not least, the Group Chief Executive of Eskom, Mr. Dan Marokane. Panelists, this is your moment to take us behind the headlines. We look forward to the conversation. Prof. Lidimo, I hand over to you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mayor Mushidi. And good day, everyone. Allow me to release special greetings to our panel members, the Honorable Minister, Dr. Ramokgopa, Dr. Nyati, and Mr. Marokane, and greetings to all the delegates who are here today. Minister, in your remarks, you gave background about the establishment of Eskom at the beginning of South Africa's industrialization. And I could even hear your passion in terms of how Eskom needs to go back to its mandate of saving our nation. We are grateful that this panel discussion will enable us to unpack the turnaround journey further and explore successes, existing gaps, and planned roadmap. Minister, how does the Energy Action Plan and the Integrated Resource Plan provide a roadmap for long-term energy security? Over to you.
So the Energy Action Plan is an intervention. So on the back of load shedding, the president took a view that we require an intervention that will help us to resolve the problem in the shortest possible space of time. The Energy Action Plan was birthed. So first it talked about fixing Eskom, and Engineer Mteto and the team then introduced the Generation Recovery Plan in response to that first outcome. The second one was to accelerate private sector generation of electricity. The third one was accelerate public procurement of private sector generated electricity. And the fourth one was to incentivize rooftop solar solutions. So if you like, the back of the meter intervention, less reliance on the Eskom grid, reduce demand on the Eskom grid, and consumers to be a bit more self-sufficient. And the last one was around unbundling. So you see that the record achievement when the Energy Action Plan was introduced, and in fact at the height of load shedding, the electricity availability factor was at its lowest. It reached about 48%. Just the other day, on the 26th of July, the energy availability factor hit above 80%.
Wow.
For the first time since 2017.
Wow.
As a result of the work that we see. And then you are seeing that we are going out ministerial determination to procure from private sector. Just the other day, I was at Siriti, it's a private sector player. They are self-generating to support their mining operation. So the Energy Action Plan really has done its magic, principally because of the capabilities of the 42,000 men and women of Eskom. On the other side, the Integrated Resource Plan is an overarching, comprehensive articulation of the energy sources that are going to undergird electricity generation in the country, ensure that we're able to achieve energy security, address the issues of environment, the cost of that electricity. We added the fourth one is to ensure that we're able to industrialize on the back of that. The lessons drawn from Van der Bijl experience, the lessons drawn from Jan Smuts, we're bringing them here because we think that on the back of the decarbonization agenda, we can have some degree of reincarnation of what they'd achieved in the 40s. So that's the direction that we're taking. So the one was an intervention was about now, and the other one is more long term to support the industrialization ambition. So that's the distinction between the two.
Okay, thank you so much, Minister. I like that you mentioned generation recovery plan, and I'm sure most of us are wondering how this generation recovery plan was conceived. And I would like to ask Dr. Nyati to share with us how was the generation recovery plan conceived.
Thank you so much for that question. I would like to start around October 2022, when the new board then was appointed. I'd like to just highlight the fact that none of those board members had applied for the job to become board members. So, and that's an important point. None of them applied. Many of us were happy where we were and with the things that we were doing, but we were asked to come and really be part of a team that turns around Eskom. So that's the first thing. And none of us were asked, which political party do you belong to? No. So I keep hearing people that these were cadres that were deployed. We do not understand where that comes from. So that's the second point I'd like to make. The third point, the reason why all of these people were appointed, it was largely because of their track record, the work that they've done elsewhere. That was the only consideration that was used to approach those board members. And when we're assembled in that first of October, when we had our first meeting, we made a conscious decision. We said we're going to be a board that is engaged. By that, we meant that this was a crisis. The country was facing a crisis. And none of us wanted necessarily to be where we were, but because we were where we were, we wanted to give it our best shot. So let's make sure that we engage. And let's engage at all levels of the organization to start to understand why are we in this crisis. So we did not just sit and ask Andre to write, hey, Andre, can you give us a report? What do we think is going on? And then be happy with that. Said, oh, we hear you, Andre, but we still have to go all around the country, all around the different power stations, and let's listen and understand what is going on. And coming out of those sessions, it became clear to us that management of Eskom was completely disconnected with the rest of the business. And that's a very important insight. We would never have got that insight had we not engaged the company deeply. And we also realized that there was a very clear view from the ground in terms of what is it that needs to be done to get us out of this problem. But none of those voices were ever listened to until we came.
Wow. So
the generation recovery plan, as much as we may claim that it was part of what we came with as the board, it was not.
Wow.
It's something that came from the ground up. It's something that those employees of Eskom believed in, and they've believed in for a very long time, but nobody was listening to them. What we did to listen, we understood, we questioned, because our board had all of this expertise. We've got finance people, we've got engineers there, we've got organizational culture experts in that organization, in that board. We had labor unionists. All of these people were there. So we challenged, we questioned that, we interrogated that plan. And when we felt that this is something that is doable, that's when we adopted it. It became something that is now say, over the next 2 years, this is what we are going to execute. But we lacked a jockey. We lacked who is going to lead this effort. And that's when we looked around and Becky came into the scene. Becky Nomalo became that person. When I approached Becky, I said, Becky, and I always say that he was in Siberia. Had been sent somewhere in Siberia. It's a place where, you know, when people want to forget you, they put you there, right? Sitting somewhere there, and it's like he's around, but nobody's, you know. So he was sitting in Siberia, and I said, Becky, we need you here. Becky said, I'm sorry. I'm not going to be helping those ones. Those are the ones who sent me to Siberia. No way. That Becky, this is something that is big. This is about South Africa. It's got nothing to do with this. We're going to deal with these ones, but give us the chance. He gave us the opportunity, Becky. He said, okay, I'm going to do it. And he was the leader that drove that generation recovery plan, which came from the ground up, adopted by the board, presented to our minister, and it became our guiding light in terms of getting us out of the challenges that we're facing.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Nyati, for highlighting the importance of stakeholder engagement and how it can really enable the organizational leadership to have a clear direction in terms of taking the organization forward. Mr. Marokane, I just want us to look at the financial profitability and stability. How will the financial and operational gains be maintained?
Okay, Prof, thank you very much. I need to say this. I was saying it to Prof earlier on that I looked at the program, Prof so-and-so, Dr. so-and-so, Mr. Marokane. I need to fix this thing. No, Prof, I need to fix this thing. I realize Megawatt Park and the campus are not too far apart. So we'll do something about this issue. I heard that the principal for teaching is in here, so I'll fill in my forms. We'll go together. But thank you very much for the opportunity. Of course, the business that Dr. Mteto just explained was also in a serious financial crisis. When you're not generating electricity, it means you're not having sales. And it also means that when your own assets are not performing to the right levels, you are having other interventions to try to plug the gap that costs you money. So at that point in time, the business was literally burning tons and tons of diesel. And I dare also say that we are probably spending money on wrong interventions, because up to that point, when the generation recovery plan was successfully developed, we would have been spending money on maintenance interventions that were not giving us the results that we wanted to see. So the generation recovery plan was important in first ensuring that you are doing the right diagnosis and you are spending the limited resources that you have to get maximum impact in terms of where you're going. I do recall at some point at the height of execution of this plan, the December of 2024, 23-24, we really had a lot of our stations units being on maintenance during the summer period, and those in the know, quote unquote, were actually wondering as to why we have so much maintenance going on. Why are we struggling with meeting demand over a summer period that should be a walk in the park? And we kept on saying we have a lot of our units on maintenance. This is going to be short-term pain for long-term gain, because we understood that as maintenance progresses deeper at the various stations and we start getting them back we'll see that impact coming through. And what did we see? We saw the first winter in 2023 that we were able to go through without load shedding. Yes, we're still spending some money on diesel to supplement the peak demand. We went through that summer and almost at the end of it, without load shedding. We learned some very critical lessons around how we are managing the risk and the impact of weather patterns that would affect the station's performance. We replanned with Becky sitting here. We looked at how are we going to approach the next winter and the summer. We were very clear that we needed to make sure that our best units in the fleet were available from a base load perspective to carry us through that. And we took a vow that we will go into summers with all Quebec units running because we wanted dependency as we were fixing the rest of the plant. We said to the country at the time, and I remember those mornings every time we go to Pretoria to explain ourselves there. It felt like going to the principal's office, but we were very determined. We were very determined that that plan needed to be worked to the T. We needed to have the discipline of getting it sorted out. The end result, Prof, was that we are now able to supply electricity from our fleet. We are even getting into a space we are starting to optimize, i.e. run the most efficient units harder and the most costly ones less.
Wow.
So we're optimizing our financial performance. And when you run your fleet like that, you see it translating to the bottom line. We reported profit after 8 years for the first time, 24 billion rands
Wow,
in that year. We dropped the expenditure line on diesel from 30s to 23 down to 13 or so. And in the next 2 weeks, we'll be announcing our results. And you'll see that trend sustained because the fundamentals are attended to. The discipline of executing the generation recovery translates to higher availability. It translates to financial performance of the business.
Wow. Thank you so much. Yeah, let's appreciate Mr. Marokane for that. I think a takeaway lesson for us is that when you are good steward in terms of allocation of resources, then you are able to ensure financial sustainability of your organization. Thank you so much, Mr. Marokane. Back to you, our Honorable Minister. How have you progressed the reforms of the industry to balance the needs of all stakeholders?
Yeah, like I must mention that in our
Yes.
own corridors,
Yes.
we refer to him as Professor Marokane, but we are taking we can't do that.
Can't say it here.
No, you are right. So I did make the point that the white paper advocated for unbundling. So with the amendment of the principal piece of legislation that governs electricity, the Electricity Regulation Act, then the reform agenda started to be placed in motion. So what we're simply saying is that we know the perils of a monopoly. So when a monopoly is complacent, the monopoly is misdirected, is unable to execute its mandate, it can collapse an economy.
Yes.
So we have seen the examples of Transnet. We have seen what happened at Eskom. And we also see that there are examples in other jurisdictions that the competition is good.
Yes.
And this is it's not about privatizing because the state still regulates. So there's still going to be the issues of administered prices, at least for now. So we're introducing, if you like, additional players on the generation side. What that is doing is to push Dan and the team to be a bit more efficient, efficiency gains, and we're beginning to see them.
Wow.
In the manner in which capital is allocated, what are the returns on that capital, and a bit more robust engagement at that level. And then you are seeing greater appetite from private sector to invest in self-generation, to invest in bilateral private generator, private off-taker. So what that does really is to do a number of things. First is that there's greater investments in the South African economy. Secondly is that there's going to be greater investments in research and innovation, because what competition does is to ensure that the actors in that space want to come in at a competitive price level. So you need to invest in innovation, research, and so forth. And then thirdly, what we are beginning to see is that we are able to build an industry on the back of that ambition. So there has to be some degree of coordination between ourselves and Minister Tau in domesticating some of the inputs that are going to support this new generation capacity. Just last week we were in China. Our visit to China was to attract Chinese OEMs to set up shop in South Africa.
Wow.
Because we don't want to export opportunities on the back of this massive build program. So what I'm saying is that it's a very complex space, so it has to be managed and managed carefully. But what Eskom will enjoy is over 100 years of engineering expertise.
Yes.
So advanced manufacturing, advanced engineering, that's what they have. They've got a huge pipeline of engineers and who have accumulated experience across a number of technologies. Eskom will be by law the only player in the South African space that is going to operate nuclear.
Okay.
So we're going to come with a 5.2 gigawatts of nuclear build program. It can only be done by Eskom.
Wow.
Eskom is the only player that is in the hydro space, is in pump storage, is in coal, is in wind, you'll see there. So it's the only player across that. And that's why you see, go to any of the IPPs in the country, any of them choose. You will see that in their management, in the technical level, the person who's there has been working for Eskom.
Wow.
So what Eskom has done was to be, if you like, the training ground for South Africa's engineering expertise. But what needs to happen now is that they must compete in a competitive market. So we're going to remove the strictures because Eskom can't be subjected to PFMA and then compete with people who don't have those strictures.
Okay.
Again, we have liberalized. So they must also play in that space. What's going to be very complex, I must admit. Remember, I spoke about the issue of public interest.
Yes.
So now I can, let me say, I can tell the chair.
Yes,
and-
you can
and-
tell.
and Mr. Marokane,
Yes.
that Joburg owes you 7 billion. Don't switch it off. I'm going to fix the problem. But in a perfectly functioning market, they will switch them off because they're not paying. So that's the perils of what you are doing. Is that it's going to get, so I can say to Mr. Mar, we are going to continue to provide free basic electricity to the poor. But they'll come back to me and say, no, but place the same obligation on other people.
Yes.
Why only me? And then at the same time, you want me to return a profit. You have removed the public interest. You have removed national interest. So allow me to play. It's a decision you have made. You must live with that decision. That's the complexity of policy making now. So I can say it now because they're a dominant actor. But there'll come a point, I don't know when are they going to come knocking
Soon.
and say, oh, is it soon? Oh, no, that's fine. We'll resolve that. So I'm just saying the balancing of that space is going to be complex.
Wow.
No one has been here before. And now we're moving from the realm of engineering into policy making. I make the point that we spend a lot of time, this thing of load shedding, just in addition to what the chair and the CEO was making. We spend a lot of time trying to explain the management of Eskom and its history.
Okay.
When I was appointed, there's no but. Solve the problem. So it's like a car has stalled. You are driving to Limpopo, you are going to a pilgrimage to Moria. When you get to Kranskop, the car just stalls. Huh? And then instead of fixing the car, you're asking, is the driver license, the car, just open the engine and fix the engine. And then once it starts idling, we ask, where's your driver's license? So we started asking the question. So you can call Lewis Hamilton, the best driver, at least I know, of his generation. If the car can't move, it don't move. You had to fix the machine. And that's why fellow engineers, when they came to me with the generation recovery plan. An engineer reads a plan differently from a social scientist. And I'm saying that with the greatest of, I said, no, this thing we're doing is Ari Mbahoman. And then we resolve the problem. So well done to fellow engineers. That's the point.
No, thank you so much, Minister. Thank you. So we are really grateful for that. Let me move to Dr. Nyati. What gains have been made in corporate governance and controls?
Yeah. If you if you look at Eskom, many people know of the issues facing Eskom as really being two issues. One is the load shedding because we're not getting the power. The other one we know of around corruption. But when we went into Eskom, we realized that in order to say that we're fixed Eskom, we need to look at all of what we call systemic issues that are facing the company. And we came up with 9 systemic issues. And one of them was around the corruption and stuff like that. But for example, things like a weak balance sheet. We can have our generation recovery plan, but somebody needs to fund that. If we do not have the money to fund it, we have got a great plan, we cannot execute on it.
Yes.
We had, for example, what we call an organizational culture that was dysfunctional. By that, we meant that we had, in many cases, in some cases, where leaders were not leading. You've been appointed to do a particular job, you are not doing the job, or manager was not managing. So there was lack of discipline. So one of the things that we brought back, people like Dan brought back, people like Becky brought back, is discipline. This is an engineering company. There are standard operating procedures with regards to how you go about doing things. If you deviate from that, you should not be surprised when you are having the consequences that we were having. That's what they brought in. They brought in that discipline. 45% of the leadership team in generation were changed by Becky to put people that he felt would be able to drive that discipline, would be able to execute. So to go back to your question, we decided amongst ourselves as the board, said we are not expert in everything. There are colleagues that are good in certain areas. They must run with this. We asked the Committee on Audit and Risk Committee to lead on the issues of controls and governance. They were experts in that. My committee that I was chairing was an expert around the technical side of things. So we looked at load shedding. There were some other colleagues who were looking at the finance side of the thing. So we leveraged the breadth of expertise within the board to make sure that we're using the right people to do the right things. So we looked and we found that in some cases, there were controls that were deliberately weakened in order to allow certain things to happen. So we had to tighten up those controls. You'll see that in some power stations, if the limit before you get approval is, let's say, 1 million, anything above 1 million, you need to get approval. You see all of these transactions of 999 something. So all of those loopholes, we had to find a way of closing them. And making sure as well that when we identify people that have done the wrong things, we don't keep quiet about it. We deal with them. There are consequences around those. And we also communicate it broadly within the organization so that people understand that there are consequences. So this drive around controls is not something that is going to end tomorrow. It's something that we need to have to continue to be working on and on. It's a culture change, and they're doing a great job in it, but it's something that we'll have to just keep getting on it all the time.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Nyati, and that commitment for continuous improvement in terms of governance control. Looking at the impact of the turnaround strategy, Mr. Marokane, how have the operational gains improved the competitiveness of South African industries?
Prof, at the height of load shedding. This is when we are having the most frequent and intense load shedding, stage 6, very frequent in 2023. The CSIR estimated that the cost to the country in that 1 year was some 2.8 trillion rands. So that's what we lost as a country from a competitive point of view. That's the retardation of GDP growth. And we know that it translated to some companies disinvesting, others shutting down. It resulted in companies' earnings dropping. I mean, if you go to 2023 and read the financial reports of many companies, all of them will say we have underperformed because electricity was not available, or we have underperformed because the alternative supply of electricity through diesel and other means was ate into our bottom line. We know that in the townships, for small, medium enterprises, businesses really lost their economic activities out of that. So we really had calamity across the country at that peak. In that year, 2023, we had load shed the country for 91% of the time. In terms of our ability to meet demand on any given day. But as the Generation Recovery Plan got more and more entrenched and executed, we saw ourselves coming back to 95, 100%, and we are continuing. That translates into confidence in the economy. You are beginning to see results now. And I really want to invite students to go look at the annual results of 2023, look at the annual results of 2025, 2026. You'll see the contrast. That's the importance of Eskom to the economy. So when we perform at the level that we are doing now, we are giving predictability. You are going to start seeing companies beginning to release the monies that they were sitting on to reinvest in production. You are seeing now already rating agencies having positive review of our credits profile. That translates to the cost of capital, the cost of borrowing, and that comes through to all of us. So a functioning Eskom is quite pivotal to the economy of the country, and we understand our role as such. We are very clear that we need to maintain this way of performance, because on top of it, we can now start addressing the issue of moving towards the growth rate that this country needs economically, so that we can start addressing also the issues of the social requirements that the society needs in broad terms. Yeah.
Wow, thank you. It gives hope, and it's great news to realize how the turnaround strategy has impacted our economy positively. Minister, which power technologies hold the most promise for South Africa?
I always make the point that the student must compute what I call the happiness index for the country. You'll find that it's indirectly proportional to the levels of load shedding.
Absolutely.
The higher the load shedding, the lower the happiness index. No load shedding, the higher the happiness index. But I'll leave to someone to compute it. So we're advocating in the RP for all mixes. So I mentioned that 5.2 gigawatts of nuclear over time will do 10 gigawatts of a nuclear industrial plant. Will do 35 gigawatts of wind. Will do 24 gigawatts of solar PV. Will do 15 gigawatts of distributed generation. Will do 16 gigawatts of gas to power. Will do about 8 to 12 gigawatts of battery storage, and we also say other technologies. So what is the point I'm making?
Yes.
Is that science will help us to resolve some of the questions that are confronting us. Let me use the apartheid example. So when a lot of the Africana coal capital was exporting good quality coal out of the country, what Eskom did was to find an engineering solution to ban low quality coal. And that's why you have Hendrina, that's why you have Camden, and that's why you have Arnold. What is the point I'm making? is that you don't relinquish your strategic assets to satisfy other interests, so foreign interests. That have nothing to do with your ambition to improve the quality of lives of our people. We can rely on science to resolve that. And that's why Eskom and the Council of Geoscience, they are coming with a technology on clean coal.
Wow.
So we'll test that technology, it will work.
Wow.
So coal is going nowhere. Coal continues to become part of the backbone of South Africa's generation because we have coal. That's the point. Cecil John Rhodes says, no, I'm not going to import this electricity from Victoria Falls because there's cheap coal here. But because we've got a duty and a responsibility to the environment, we're saying that we are going to apply clean coal technology. But then on the other side, we advocate for additionality. What do I mean? What others will want us to do? They say every day they sing a song, close all the power stations and then just build renewables. He says, no, that's our strategic asset. Minister Mandasha went to cabinet, we approved coal is part of our critical minerals. Just in case you didn't know, we have categorized it as such. We'll continue to exploit it. But we're saying on the other side, so coal, we paid with clean coal technologies. So we address the concerns around the environment because we have the same amount of concern about the health implications of communities within the immediate footprint of power stations. But on the one hand, we're saying that we are going to accelerate the exploitation of renewable energy endowments. We've got good quality sun. If you had to do an irradiation atlas, the corridor of the Northern Cape going into Namibia, one of the top 5 in the world. Just the other day, I did mention Siriti opened their energy complex. Others said, no, wind is only in the Cape areas. There is wind in Mpumalanga. We have always made the point that science will resolve this. And I'm just saying that others, because of lack of knowledge, they enter the terrain of science in the energy complex and use pedestrian tools on trying to understand what that. No, I'm saying that seriously, because we can't be undermined as scientists. There is something remarkable about the Eskom story beyond what is being told. What is that story? Is that you've got competent black professionals who can resolve this problem. And don't sugarcoat it. Don't address it in some diplomatic color because they thought, oh, let's see what they will achieve. They've resolved the problem and will continue to resuscitate the South African. We must be proud about what has been achieved. Have they achieved it on their own? No. Go to Eskom management. It's all racist, but you'll see the face of this. I mean, when we're experiencing load shedding, we'll be called all sorts of names. But we knew that what we are doing, we understand it better internally. What Dan was saying, short-term pain, long-term gain, we have resolved this problem. So the long and short to your answer, it's all of the above. There's no biasness, but there's going to be an accelerated and exponential increase on renewable energy sources because science helps us to keep coal in the mix. And I'm saying that the days of coal are not yesterday. Coal continues to be the backbone of energy generation in the country as we continue to keep our responsibilities to the environment. The future is bright.
Wow,
I can
that's
tell
great.
you.
No.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Minister, for also highlighting the value of science that we need to really take a great acknowledgement of the scientific contributions that professionals are doing in the field of energy. Dr. Nyati, how did the board lead during the crisis?
So I've already indicated that we made a conscious decision that we're not going to be that board that meet once a quarter and all we're interested in what is going to be served for lunch. We were very clear we're not going to be that board. We're going to be a board that is engaged. So one of our first responsibility was to make sure that when Andre indicated that he was leaving and we said you can go, we then said, okay, we need to find a leader that's going to lead this organization. And that was not going to be an easy thing. And for us, we looked at, because we had spent a lot of time going deep in the organization, we understood the challenges that this business was facing. So to find a leader that could be able to lead in that environment was never going to be easy. And we felt that there were three things that were needed. One, a leader that got a heart. Two, a leader that's got a good head. And also a leader that's got hands, meaning be able to roll up their sleeves if required. Many of the leaders that we have had only maybe one of those or none of those. So we went out and we were able to get Dan.
Oh, great.
Getting Dan was one of the most important things that we would have for that business. Because Dan was not just relevant for the past, meaning fixing load shedding. He was also relevant for the future, helping this company to be able to be competitive going forward. You have heard from the minister that the environment that we are going to be operating under is going to be a competitive environment. So how do you change a culture that was a bit relaxed, where you're in monopoly, to a culture that understands that you need to put customers first? You need to move fast, make decisions. You need to be agile, and he is that kind of a leader. So we found that in Dan.
Okay, great.
We also inherited an environment where, for 5 years, the employees of Eskom had not received a salary increase. And we say how, of course, for more than 5 years we had load shedding, so it's good, it's good that they were not having a salary increase. If you are a scholar of leadership, you would understand actually that's a bad thing to do. It's what I call collective punishment. You just don't do that.
Yes.
You just don't do that. So we had to have difficult conversations and sometimes not so difficult with our leaders, the shareholder, and we were able to bring back the salary increase for our people. The other piece that we did not have is what we called a performance-based incentives. All of those have been removed. If you want to drive a culture change within a company, one of the tools that you have is those performance incentives. For the people that are not performing, it's great, you're going to get nothing. But for those that are performing, they're going to get something. So we brought back both short-term and long-term incentives into the business. And that's very important for the change in terms of the culture. So we're able to bring that, So that's what this board, yes, on the people side was able to bring, and made sure that you are creating an environment where people are looking forward to coming to work. When you go to Megawatt Park, it was so quiet that nobody was coming to work. It's like maybe it's a funeral. Really, it was the environment was terrible.
Wow.
If you go to it now, it's buzzing with energy,
Wow,
and that's how it should be. And we brought back a lot of that. We brought back the discipline. When people are saying that, hey, one of the values of Eskom, we say one of our values is excellence. That's a great value. But then you ask yourself, load shedding, excellence, how do those two things connect? So reminding people that they have got a responsibility to live their values. If your value is excellence, let's make sure that you excel in terms of what of the stuff you do. Holding our leaders accountable was one of the things that is the responsibility of the board, and it's the responsibility of the of Exco as well to do the same to the people further down the organization. So bringing back the organization into living its mission and purpose. Its purpose being, we want to make sure that we are powering growth sustainable. That's our purpose. But if we are having all of these companies closing because of load shedding, are you leaving your purpose? So reminding people of the bigger agenda of the company, bigger agenda, which is about industrialization of our country. That's our agenda. Making sure that we are doing in this country of ours beneficiation of these critical minerals. We can only do that if we are going to have energy that is affordable. So those were the things that we continue to do. We did and we continue to do to make sure that this company becomes relevant as we go forward.
Okay. Thank you so much for highlighting the importance of being people-centered in one's leadership. Mr. Marokane, how important has the leadership and morale been to deliver the strategy of Eskom, the turnaround strategy?
Prof, the chairman has already spoken about the importance of leadership and how the leadership reconfiguration happened all the way from the board down into the executive team and below, all the way down to the power station level. So for me, maybe the one point I wanted to stress is that much as we've spent time designing or diagnosing the problem and coming up with a generation recovery plan, that is only part of your journey towards recovery. What you need thereafter is really brutal, disciplined execution of your plan. So you need to be able to move from grand plans that are sitting in glossy presentations to ensuring that on the ground there's total alignment in executing those plans.
Okay.
You stick to those plans, you can actually see when things go wrong, and you can immediately do some course corrections. So the strategy provides you with a very clear direction of where you are headed to. It's a first articulation of your intention or your intentions, intended way of resolving the problem. But leadership brings about that alignment within the business. It's leadership coming from the board, in our case, started from the shareholder into the board, into the executive team, down into the next level. So that total alignment, clarity in terms of what is needed to be done now and by when and how it should look like, and everybody singing to the same hymn sheet is what we then do as a collective leadership team. Of course, in a space where people are despondent, people have been repeatedly told that they are good for nothing, in a place where they've been treated in a manner that suggests that they are not worth it. You cannot deliver these plans. None of these plans can be delivered without people. People are at the center of the delivery. And so you need to have your people on board and starting to work on morale. It's an important aspect. So you look at the hygiene issues, but you invest in the lifting the morale of your staff, because it is the morale that is going to be what carries you through. It is going to be the morale that provides you with the resilience when times are tough. And there were tough times in this journey. I said to you that, the Sunday morning press conferences when things were not good were very hurtful to all of us. But they were equally hurtful to our staff. Because just as you thought you are winning over this thing, you have another blip, and the naysayers are quick to stand and say, like, we knew that they're not going to do it.
Yeah.
We knew that it is not sustainable. During those moments, what carries people through is the fact that they were highly motivated.
Wow.
They were taken from that point where they felt at some point that they're good for nothing to where they knew that they can believe in themselves. It is their plan that they're executed, they are being led, and their leaders believe in them. And we do have the tough love within our space, but we know what we need to focus on. So the morale in Eskom is all-time high. You saw I'm wearing my Eskom we all here. Now people are wearing the t-shirts. We move around. Are we out of the woods now? Yet? No. There's a lot more for us to do, but we are very clear. Give us these problems, we'll resolve them one by one systematically. What we are not allowing ourselves to suffer from is the view that says we just watch them, they're going to fail tomorrow. We are not in that game.
Yes.
We are very clear in terms of where we go. And, it's really a confluence of the strategic direction, the leadership alignment, and also the high morale that is within our people. Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir. We are now going to allow 3 questions from the delegates who are here. If you have a question for our panelists, you can raise your hand. I see. Wow. How am I going to? Can I ask Miss our program director, Memushidi, to help us in terms of getting the 3 questions for us?
Introduce yourself.
And please introduce yourself and where you are from and your question. Please, no theses, no presentation, just stick to the point, ask the question.
Good morning. Thank you. My name is Martin Sadiq. I work for the University of South Africa. And when Eskom started problems, I did my master's, now my PhD with you. And thanks for giving me permission at Eskom to do interviews. The PFMA minister, as you liberalize the electricity industry, how quick will you be able to remove that because it's rigid to compete? Thank you.
Okay.
I wanted to suggest that we take 3 and then afford the panel the opportunity to
Yes,
respond.
let's do that.
If they are short enough, perhaps we can squeeze in the last 3.
Yes, we can do that.
Okay. Could we prioritize even members of the media as well? Where are you from? Can we not?
But the media, they ask us questions every day.
Yes, let's give members of the community and yeah.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. My question, it will be directed to Prof. Dan. So I think clean cooking is a very imperative conversation that has a direct impact on what we're talking to, right? Because we know that's where the most vulnerable. I mean, the minister opens with a profound statement that electricity is not affordable in this room. So in the marginalized communities, it's probably even worse. And what we've seen with the Eskom air quality offset is that when the minister launched the clean cooking out of the G20 project, it showed us that we can actually run that project not just as an air quality offset, but as a business model. And what is profound with that model, Prof, is that it then automatically brings in local stakeholders and local ownership at the ground level, right? So I really just want to hear your thoughts around how are we thinking about it? Because yes, we talk about the mixed energy plan, but are we also just conscious to make sure that it happens even really at the ground level? Thank you.
Thank you. Another one, let me see.
Let me try and move a bit this side. Good afternoon, Sanbona. Tulisa Sosibo. I'm representing a company in Powerworks. I'm the managing exec there. My question is slightly different from just reading from our JAM report, or rather the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor. This specific sector, when I say sector, like the energy sector, it just shows of how there's progressive activity amongst entrepreneurial activity within South Africa. But my question is then to our minister, is that from a blended finance for capital intensive hardware, which was also flagged for this particular sector, the core funding gap was then of course then what was flagged. What role should government backed instrument through either our DFIs and of course the dedicated climate fund play in de-risking, number one, that hardware layer from an early stage ventures, rather than only it being from, the utility scale IPPs?
Okay, thank you so much, ma'am. We can start with the Honorable Minister if
Yes, yes.
you are ready.
No, thanks for the question. The first one was how soon are we able to free or liberate Eskom from the PFMA? Of course, it's a submission I'll make to Cabinet. And of course, before I get there, I would have had an engagement with my peer, the Minister of Finance. I'm raising a principle. So we have agreed that we are unbundling. We have agreed that Eskom will not be vertically integrated anymore. And we're saying that on the generation side, there are a number of actors. And to regulate this new dispensation, we're introducing the South Africa wholesale electricity market, where actors can choose to play through bilaterals or go through a central purchasing agency for the on-selling of that electricity. Eskom does not have the flexibility that other private sector actors have. Eskom has to be subjected to the PFMA. If Eskom sees an opportunity, like now we're launching Eskom Green, we will not be able to compete with the IPPs at the speed that is required because it has to comply with the PFMA. Eskom sees an opportunity from a technology point of view that can advance its interests, but Eskom then is expected to go out in the public market to source other actors, when in fact the other parties in the same domain are not subjected to that. So I'm saying that's an unfair level, an unfair playing field. So we need to level the playing field. We have agreed on liberalization. We have codified it in the Act. Then Eskom must be freed from that, because when the Eskom Act was envisaged, that dispensation never existed. The dispensation I've explained, Osmans and PW Water and the rest, the democratic government, and it's only now that in the Act is codified, now it's law, and therefore Eskom is one of the players. It must be afforded that. So I don't control the speed. I can make the case, and I think that the case is compelling. On the issues from Ms. Sosibo is, she's absolutely correct. Let me use an example on what we're doing on the transmission expansion. So we need 14,500 kilometers of new lines to the tune of 440 billion rands. That's the size of that ticket. A part of that will be an on-balance sheet solution, which the NTCSA will roll out. But a big chunk of that will be private sector, where we'll be concessioning the lines. So how are we de-risking the project? So we're saying that before we concession the line, we are going to do what we call a late-stage tender. By late-stage tender, I mean we secure the servitudes, all the regulatory and permitting requirements. The state would have resolved that, so that when an actor is appointed as a preferred bidder status, they don't have to burden themselves with the regulations. It can take an inordinate amount of time. The state would have de-risked it. The other instrument we are introducing is that the sector is matured. So we don't want to overburden the fiscus. So we're reluctant to provide a sovereign guarantee, because we are going to deteriorate the fiscal mix, and we've got our own fiscal strategy. So we don't want to overburden that. As it is now, there's significant exposure of the fiscus to Eskom and also Transnet, as an example. So we're introducing what we call a credit guarantee vehicle, which will serve as a backstop. The state will invest some money. Minister Godongwane did announce in the last budget statement, we're putting seed capital of about 2 billion, and other DFIs are coming in, the DAPSA, the IDC, and that's going to be the backstop. And we'll use that instrument. We'll continue to replenish it. And then over time, we think we'd have designed a perfect template, not just for Eskom, but for the rest of the country, to be able to finance this build program. It's immense. I mean, from the generation side, it's 2.2 trillion rand. The state is not going to fund a cent of that. Eskom Green must go out, fund that money. And like I said, now if it's got these strictures, it's unlikely going to attract the right candidate to partner with. They must make choices on technology, on the profile of the financing instrument. And they shouldn't be burdened by the PFMA. They should consider what their balance sheet looks like and what other competitors are doing. So that's, but some of the things that we are doing on late stage tender to de-risk the project and find solutions to expand the build program.
Thank you so much, Minister.
Yeah, there was a question relating to clean cooking. Clean cooking has launched, you are right, addresses two issues. The first one is confronting the issue of infant mortality and also mortality of women who are stuck as a result of having to provide for families with no adequate, reliable energy sources. So it addresses that aspect. It addresses the issue of emissions and improving the health conditions of many of the indigent families. We've seen the impact, as you explained. We have run a number of these programs ourselves in the Mpumalanga areas as part of our offsets. We have made the case that we can actually roll out this program on a larger basis as part of the accepted mitigations of our minimum emission standards. We said we should deal with this. But I should also point out that part of making electricity accessible and affordable involves a use of other technologies. In Musina, in December, with the minister, we launched the Smart Village that has allowed us to use a combination of PVs and batteries to really provide electricity to a number of households that otherwise would not have qualified or would have waited for long to get that level of connectivity. So as the minister says, we have science helping us to address a number of these challenges through multiple pathways. And you will see from an Eskom perspective going forward that even in some of these areas where clean cooking is a necessity today because there's no electricity, we are able to advance other solutions on a larger scale without waiting for distribution reticulation lines, but you are able to provide localized grids that gives the same kind of quality electricity through to these communities. We have to roll those out and we have to embrace them. We are at an advantaged position in South Africa that as we do this, perfect it, we can also assist the continent to really connect many of the people on the continent who are not having access to electricity, and infrastructure is a challenge. These technologies are scalable. They can also be transferred very easily. And that's a space that part of the DE's mission is to really get South Africa back to becoming the leader in the region and the leader on the continent in providing some of the solutions.
Thank you, Mr. Marokane. Program Director, do we still have an opportunity for questions or we can wrap up?
I think we can wrap up.
We can
Prof.
wrap up. Okay. Thank you, Memushidi. Let me start with the Minister to share your parting words before we close the panel discussion.
Obviously, the recovery of Eskom is translating into tangible results. You have seen that Mr. Marokane and the team, as a result of excess generation that they've been able to achieve, now the smelters are not closing. It is Glencoe and Samanco, and there's a commitment to reopen the smelters going forward. I think we had 11 operating out of a fleet of about 49 or 51. There's a commitment that over time that will be ramped up. And then we getting now a second phase of companies that are going to benefit from that dispensation. We just signed a framework to support Eskom's decision in relation to that dispensation. So we're getting people into jobs. We are getting the economy growing. We are going back to what I started earlier on, so that Eskom or electricity is a ticket to industrialization, to borrow the words of what Smarts had said. I'm not idolizing it, so don't misquote me. I provided the context. I'm using a narrow lens of critiquing what they were doing. So the state must appreciate that it can be displaced. The state can be retrenched. The state must not abrogate its responsibility to lead. And the Asian tigers have shown us, as Chalmers Johnson makes the observation, one of the major successes that explains the successes of the Asian tigers was a state that was decisive. We have the electricity, the state must be decisive in how we use this electricity to make sure that the poor are included, the middle class continues to rise, industry is able to thrive, and in that way we are going to lift everyone and leave no one behind. And that's what it means to keep the lights on, is to drive South Africa's industrialization ambition. I can tell you, we are on a good betting wicket. We are getting there. I'm very confident about the future prospects of the country as a result of this giant. They've provoked it, the giant has woken up, and they are all afraid.
Wow, that's great. Thank you. Thank you so much, Minister. Dr. Nyati, your parting words, sir?
Yeah, so if I look back about 4 years ago when we embarked on this journey, one of the things that struck us as we're looking at the 42,000 employees of Eskom is how much they had lost confidence in themselves. You know, we don't know how we have collectively negatively impacted the employees of Eskom, the jokes that we're making about these people. And yet, this is a group of people that, if you look at the people who managed to get into Eskom, probably, you know, the top 1% of the country in terms of intellect, in terms of all sorts of things, looking at all sorts of profession, engineering, finance, but the way that they were looking at themselves was because they had such a negative self-concept. And what I see today is something that is completely different. These are people that are confident about who they are. They have remembered who they are, and they have also defined a place for themselves, saying that we are not going to be defined by what happened in the past. We are going to show the world who we truly are, and we are going to be making this company to be a critical company that is going to be powering the growth of not just South Africa, but of the region. And to me, to be part of that journey has been such an exciting thing. When I start to hear them talking about, now that we've got excess capacity, we need to be thinking about exporting this. We need to be thinking about making sure that we are the providers of base load for the region. As the region embarks on critical minerals, processing of those, we need to be at the center of that, enabling that. And that's jobs. Not just for South Africa, but jobs in Zimbabwe, jobs in Zambia, jobs elsewhere in the Congo. You know, that is the kind of vision that one is seeing when he's talking to the leaders of this company. And it's a really an exciting time to be in. Right now, to be in Eskom, and I really like to thank the leadership team led by Dan for taking us to be where we are now. And also, I'd like to just say, one of the things that many other departments can learn out of the Department of Energy, of Electricity and Energy, is the alignment between the ministry, the board, and the executive.
Yes, that's very critical.
We take that for granted. But here, we've got that perfect alignment.
Wow,
we are not afraid to have difficult conversations. We are not afraid to have difficult conversations, but we have each other's back. because we know that we've got a huge responsibility, a responsibility of powering this country for growth. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, sir. Mr. Marokane, you are parting words, sir?
Yeah, Prof, Prof, did you have to say Mr. again? I get it. I'm here tomorrow. Tomorrow I'll be here to register.
Sorry, before. I don't want to breach protocols yet. But what I will do is that I will encourage you for RPF.
I'll be there. Prof, we're gonna discuss this now.
Yeah.
Prof, today's theme was more around the turnaround of Eskom. But I just want to tell you that for us here as a leadership, from the minister all the way, we've been very clear. This was not about ending load shedding.
Yes.
Load shedding was not the destination of what we think this company should be doing. Load shedding was a necessary step for us to achieve. But this is broadly about the reinvention of Eskom itself. So how do we create the Eskom of the next 100 years? This is 102 years old now. How do we reposition ourselves for the emerging world that we have now entered? And we have seen that we have announced the emergence of Eskom Green. We are moving very fast in terms of how we work with municipalities in very creative ways of distribution agency agreement. As we work towards reforms in that part of the space, we are engaging differently. And as far as the product offerings going forward are concerned, you'll see more of EV charging stations coming from us. We have spoken very loudly around supporting emerging industries, data centers, which are power hungry. Yes, some customers will migrate as they put on rooftop solar, but we can redirect our base load towards supporting other industries. In that way, give Eskom another lease of life. As the minister calls it, the Eskom 2.0. So we are excited. We have achieved this. We are not resting on our laurels. We have to maintain it, but we are reinventing ourselves in the process. Yeah, thank you very much.
Wow. No, thank you. Panel members, we are grateful and appreciate your insightful, thought-provoking and valuable conversation that we had. We are really grateful and thank you. Memushidi, over to you. Back to you, ma'am.
Before the panel leave the podium, I'm not sure we have tokens of appreciation to give to them. And then I'm hoping that straight after that, we can take a group photo. Okay. Dr. Chibas. Dr. Chibas. Our VP. May I please call to the stage Dr. Chibase and Prof. Linganiso to just help us hand over the gifts to the panel.
Thank you so much, Minister.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Prof, thank you very
Well
much.
done. Well done.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, my sister. Thank you.
Wait for Prof. Chivas.
This is today, Chairperson
Dr.
and
Chivas,
CEO.
let's start with the minister first.
Minister got
Yeah,
his.
let's start with the minister first.
He got his.
That one. Give it back again. Did you take the photo? They need to take a photo. Oh,
Right.
yeah.
Can we not invite Prof. Nati?
Yeah, I saw.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Da.